Hey everyone, we are live for our Sunday weekly warm-up with an amazing guest that we all know and love. Prior to coming live, we were having a very in-depth conversation. We almost forgot to go live because we were literally planning our future. So if you're just tuning in, I'm so glad you're here because you got to join this wacky conversation. The doctor is in the house and we are going to have some good conversation with really, I think, one of the most important doctors on the planet today. So get ready to talk to the one and only Dr. I was going to say Ed Sheeran. It's not. It's Dennis Sheeran, but we'll be right back. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this Sunday weekly warm-up. We're thrilled you're here, streaming exclusively in our private Facebook group over at teachbettergroup.com. I may have got you excited that we have Ed Sheeran here, but we have the better Sheeran here because he's a doctor, Dr. Dennis Sheeran. How you feeling today?
A little bit less now that the Ed Sheeran thing is there, but still good about myself. Thanks for having me.
I feel like you have a name that sounds famous regardless of who says it. Like Dr. Dennis Sheeran, like you should have your own TV show.
I'll work on it. You know, like I said, I have no idea what the career future is going to hold for me, but the best part about this is that I no longer have to write a dissertation. That's over with. Ooh. And that I have people like my kids that call me Dr. Dad. It's fun. It's just I just wanted some more clout in the family, and I ended up earning it by leaving them alone for 4 years.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Brad, I've always wanted your last name. Like, I think Ray Hughes would be like be a vibe. So I feel like you have a famous, fancy name too.
I think all of us are pretty famous, at least locally famous here in our Teach Better Sunday weekly warm-up space. And, you know, as far as Ed Sheeran and Dr. Dennis Sheeran, I'm just thinking out loud here, but, you know, I think we've got the A-team assembled, the A-team. And, I'm looking forward to a wonderful show. And afterwards, we're going to bask in the afterglow of great conversation with Dr. Dennis Sheeran and everybody in the comments. We've got to get you, thinking out loud yourselves and get in the comments. Let us know what you're thinking.
Brad, your puns are the best of all time.
I appreciate it.
So good. Hey everyone, before we went live, we were talking to, Dr. Dennis Sheeran, who in theory we could call Dennis, but him being a doctor feels so fancy. And like, this is a new thing. I feel like that's evolved over the last, what has it been? Dennis, when did you officially become a doctor? Like 6 months ago?
April.
Yeah. So it's new. We can still like bow and we should still be curtsying to you essentially when we say your name or see you in person.
I'll just take a salute. That's all.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Well, as we talk to Dr. Dennis Sheeran, we were talking before we went live and planning our careers. And, if education doesn't work out, I decided I'm going to be a professional watercolor artist. And Dennis had a huge plan for me that I would cut out my pictures and hide them in the real world, and then people would find them. And then Brad's like, oh my gosh, then you could interview people and start a podcast, and I could literally go viral. So I don't mean to say I don't love this family, but if you see me gone for a while and I am like, becoming a famous celebrity, it was this conversation that did it.
And Ray, if you took your watercolor show on the road, maybe that will be your chance to, for a brush with greatness.
There we go.
Listen, all I gotta say is that it's a blank canvas out there.
Oh.
You never really know what you're gonna see, but it's those experiences that you experience that you bring back to this family that make us richer. So we can only encourage you.
That's true. Do you guys automatically get a royalty that you guys came up with this idea?
Oh, yes, we sure do. Yeah. I can see my PayPal account growing by leaps and bounds just as we continue this conversation.
Ooh. What percentage are you taking? Guys, actually, it'd be helpful. Could you put in the comments what percentage Brad and Dr. Dennis Sheeran get for creating this idea? And we'll go off your comments. So let us know what percentage they get of, obviously my future celebrity status. Before we get too far in, though, Dennis, do you mind sharing who you are in case people in our community are new to the family and haven't connected with you before?
Sure. If you're wondering who Ray is talking about, that's me. I'm Dennis Sheeran. I have been teaching for a really long time. I taught high school math for 13 years. I was a district supervisor in New Jersey for 7 after that. I've been a consultant working with teachers across the country. Now I'm a full-time math professor at Montclair State University in New Jersey, where I teach pre-service educators, hopefully getting just swaths of people entering the teaching field that know what we're doing with people who are already in the teaching field, so that we can just kind of grow all of this together. And that's, I mean, pretty much just about me. I wrote a couple of books. If you're out there and you look them up on Amazon, there's some things that I like to talk about being relevant in today's society and understanding what it means to truly get into a math classroom, especially in unique and creative ways to connect with the kids who are there now.
For those of you who are looking at the screen as you're looking at your phone, or maybe you have us up on your TV somehow. I mean, we're not technically streaming on YouTube yet until Monday, but maybe you figured out a way to project us in your family room. I just want you to know, you've all seen Dennis before. He's a part of the speakers network that we have over at teachbetter.com. He's very, very connected to us. Dennis, I kind of feel like you're an OG because I heard you keynote, I think in 2018. You were already, big and famous and fancy, but I was sitting in the audience, like in awe, listening to you on stage. And then somehow we became connected, and I have your phone number. It's no big deal.
I give it to anybody. Don't worry about it. No, there's a hope that if we all have something that's a message of ours, it's something important, something that really we value, that we'll find people who value it too. And the only way to do that is to talk about it. So whoever's out in this stream or whoever watches this whole thing, I know for certain you've got something to say, something that can help all of us grow, something that help all of us learn something new. And just the other day, I was with a group of teachers, and I said something, and 2 or 3 people said, I had never thought about it that way. And I know you've all got those experiences, and I can only encourage you to say them, because we won't know unless you do. So please share those experiences with us. That's what makes us grow. That's how Ray and I and Brad get connected. And that's how we all make a better world for us as teachers and for other teachers. And that's really why we met up in 2018, because somebody thought that something I had to say was worth sharing with others. And they brought me to a place where you were sitting. So I appreciate that.
It was awesome. I love the concept of relevancy. And I know that I do believe that educators over recent years have continued to see the importance of it. However, it can be really challenging. And something I really value about the resources you share and the conversations you have, Dennis, is trying to make it easier for teachers to be consistent with that relevancy. Brad, I know you love, as a principal, seeing relevancy happen all the time in learning with your teachers. Do you want to speak to that concept a little bit?
It just has to do with knowing your students, knowing the kids in front of you so well that you have a passion. You're inspired to bring their learning and their interests to life each and every day. To me, that's where the relevance is. And that's really the art of education, is making those moment-to-moment shifts based on the needs, the interests, the challenges, the setbacks, and the desire to succeed of the young people in front of you. And Dennis, not only are you exemplifying that relevancy, but you do so when you speak and when you connect with others in such an engaging and such a reassuring way. I think that educators are often seeking to be innovators, and they're often seeking to come up with the next big idea. And what I hear you saying is that each of us has a gift, and each of us has experiences that we may take for granted as being sort of run of the mill, kind of ordinary. But my ordinary experiences to you, Dennis, or to you, Ray, or to anyone watching and listening, may be extraordinary if we're only willing to share what we've learned.
Absolutely. I think the giant amount of puzzle pieces, the crowdsourcing of all of this, the Bugs Life analogy of overcoming the big guy with all the little guys, it's unfortunately, Brad, you're a principal, so some people look at you as the big guy, but it's this idea that no one of us has this magic bullet for education. No one of us has this thing that can fix and change and adapt to everything. But all together, I think we have a much better picture of what we can do. And I think it's interesting because it's not just topical relevancy. I think that's really important. It's not just like that. I know I always point to the fact that like if you're out there listening right now, a fidget spinner is totally irrelevant to kids. 6 years ago it was amazing, and right now don't even think about using it in a classroom. But it's not the point. some of what we talk about with what's relevant now and what matters now, and getting to know our kids is the only way we find out what they care about now. And it's different regionally, locally, everywhere. But when we see the things that they care about, we step back a layer or two, we can see the features of the things that they care about. Because I think I was working with my pre-service teachers the other day, and I was having them play a game. If you guys aren't familiar with Math Snacks, Ray, look it up. There's some great games there that came out of a research grant from the NSF, but they were playing one called Ratio Rumbler, and it was fun, and they were connecting these things and building potions and whatnot. And these are my college students who simply asked, hey, we have a 2.5-hour class. Can we just play this the whole time? You know, I'm like, no, but really interesting, because when you looked at it, it looked like Candy Crush. And when you look at Candy Crush, you might not recognize this, but Candy Crush looks like Fortnite. Because when you step back and take away specifics like that it's a shooting game versus a candy explosion game, the main features of what people like about those games are that they are not routine. They are always changing. There's always new things happening in it. There's a time constraint to it that matters, but you can hack it because you can change it. You can buy things that will help you out. You get to work together if you want to, or you can win at something without being the best at it. You can just be lucky at it. And when you look at the features of those types of games that kids and adults, perfect, honestly, when you think about Candy Crush, will play forever, ask yourself if those features exist in your classroom. Is my classroom a place where the routine is the same every day? Kids have no voice. They're not competing against themselves to get better. They're not hoping for outcomes that will make them want to come back. They don't get a chance to hack it. There's no real desire to improve within it. Because if that's the way your room sounds, it is nothing like the environment that they want to be in. So not just how do I get Candy Crush into my classroom as in math game form, but how do I make my classroom into a place that emulates the digital space that they want to go to without question?
You know, Dennis, the keynote that I saw you share, or that I heard you share and saw you share in 2018, I'm kind of guessing on the year. I kind of think it was 2018 in Indiana. That's my guess. Was on bottle flipping. And you're right, just like the fidget spinner, you're like, right now that's not as cool. But at the time, 2018, that was the only thing that mattered on the planet. So it was so interesting. I love that every time I hear you speak, first of all, I learned something. But especially with your Candy Crush example here, you're not just looking at something like Candy Crush and saying, this is engaging, I should bring it into my classroom, which I think teachers aspire to do as consistently as possible. But you're going into it even further. I almost feel like sometimes people choose to see an idea and take a few steps back to look at philosophy. You're somebody that constantly is looking at something, and I don't have the right analogy, but in my brain, you get closer and closer and closer to it to not just see the Candy Crush game, but what is actually the rules? Why is this engaging? And now it has nothing to do with exploding fruit and more to do with, like you just shared, those rules that as an educator, as a person, I don't dive into things that deeply, but how impactful can it be to notify those identify those patterns, and then implement them in our daily life, which includes our classroom.
Yeah. And Lauren jumped in and said, like, the quote that, like, would I want to be a learner in my own classroom? Right. And I love that question. And I love I think it was Dave Burgess who said, like, is your classroom a place where kids would go if they didn't have to? Right. And in all of those aspects, like, really, you should be taking your little lesson plan folder in your Google Drive that's labeled lesson plans that you submit every week, taking off the phrase lesson plans and retitling it student experiences. Because you need to frame what you plan for your class based around what they're going to be doing in that classroom. Because otherwise, you're just making a list of things you're going to be doing, and it becomes your job and not their learning. And it's a whole hard shift to make, that your job isn't just something you perform. If you want to perform, get on stage.
Can someone write that down for me later?
Yeah.
So
right there with you.
So put that in the comments. Also, speaking of people commenting, can we shout out Brian, who is listening? Brian, congratulations that Man City won today, but sorry that Tottenham, my team, is still in first place.
you just got to get it out there while it's there. But that's the same Brian who said bottle flipping is still a thing, unfortunately. Let's go with fortunately. Get the bottles, fill them up to different water levels, get different types of bottles like the Fiji ones that are square and the cheap ones that are round, and put them out there and have kids do a statistical experiment to find out which one of those bottles is the best for flipping so that they can become a lunchroom hero, turn it into a math experience. And because you flipped it so much in your classroom, they'll never want to do it again.
And that kind of experience is the one that is unexpected. Like many kids would never expect an educator to orchestrate that kind of experience for them at any time, let alone in their classroom, and then to make those learning connections. It's that, that power of surprise, that power of, willing to think outside the box to meet kids where they are. And I love that shift between lesson plans to student experiences. Love that so much, Dennis.
See, we're already in this conversation around how to be better as an educator. We might as well just transition into our Sunday strategies, which is a segment we have every single week to hopes to get all of you tuning in a little bit of, like educational food for thought as you head into the week. So we'll be right back. I'm sure Dennis has more to share with us. Hey everyone, we are here with our Sunday weekly warm-up and we're getting into some strategies. We have Dr. Dennis Sheeran with us, and of course, Brad Hughes is in the house. We've already had some great conversation around how to consistently bring in relevancy into your classroom, but now we want to get into the real big passion behind Dr. Sheeran. What does he really hope you gain from today's conversation? What's the takeaway we really want to make sure you have with you as you head into the week? Lot of discussion coming up. Make sure to utilize the comments if you have any questions, food for thought, things that you want Dr. Dennis Sheeran to consider, or just questions that you want to add to the conversation. Remember that the Sunday weekly warm-up streams and exclusively in our private Facebook group so that you can participate in the comments with not only those on screen, but those also participating in the comments. Brad, we have a long way to go here on the show to make sure that we have as many ideas for people as possible. Where do you think we begin?
I want to go back, Dennis, to the surprise and delight with which you orchestrate student experiences. And I was thinking about the Candy Crush example, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about where you see the power and potential of educator feedback to continue to loop positively into student engagement and student learning.
It's really interesting when you think about what we do. I'm sorry, I'm all falling into my couch here. When you think about what we do, we, at the end of the day, we should be really, really tired. And that fatigue should come not from talking for so long and standing and looking around the room for so long, but from decision making. And there's a lot of research out there on decision making fatigue. And strangely enough, they did it with parole officers. And like at the beginning of the day, they would let some guys out of jail. And at the end of the day, somebody with the same qualifications was kept in jail. Because by the end of the day, they'd made so many decisions that they couldn't make the right ones anymore, which for all of you out there is why when you go home, anybody wants to figure out what you're going to do for dinner. And you're like, I don't know. I'm done, right? You actually can't decide if you've been spending your day decision making. And our feedback process is based so much on immediate decision making and reflection and then changing and then growing from that decision and then coming back and making more decisions throughout the day that we should be fatigued by that at the end of the day, which means if the best thing for kids is to be coached through their learning, through feedback and through decision making on our part, probably the best thing for us is to plan less. Because when we plan everything out more, we don't leave room for us to engage with where kids are thinking. And so the example of that video game that I played with my college students, I had more things planned for that lesson that day. And as I originally planned it out, I was thinking I'm going to go through how to teach ratios a little bit. We're going to clean up on what we did last week. Then I'm going to let them play this game and we'll close it that way. And then I thought, I think this game teaches them what they need to know. So I'm going to give it to them. We're just going to play it. They got in there. They started playing it. They started realizing from being near each other that they could use these coins that they'd gotten to buy some lightning bolts to kill this thing faster, whatever it was. I didn't have to say a thing to them during this process, but it was me moving around the room, asking them questions about what they're noticing, giving them feedback about these ratios that they were trying to build out of potions, but then clearly and carefully stating to them what they had just discovered was really important. We have a tendency to not say things as teachers. Sorry if you're out there, you just don't say things. What you do is you say almost full sentences and you leave the last word blank and consider it a question worth asking. Like, hey kids, we all know that 5 times 7 is, and then you wait for 35. And then you call on a kid who you thought wasn't paying attention and you thought maybe I'll get him. And then you turned it into a discipline moment for some reason because he wasn't paying attention. And then he gave you the wrong answer. And then you decided you had to spend 3 minutes going over why it wasn't. You just chose a moment to waste on your own instead of just saying to kids clearly out of your educated mouth, remember 5 times 7 is 35. And we're using that here. So walking around that room and working with those kids and saying, did you notice that this was this? They might not be able to answer. But when I walk up and said, you just made a string of potions that had 4 red ones and 4 green ones, and that's the same ratio as 1 to 1, no matter how many times that number changes, and walked away, I planted the truth, if you will, from what they had learned into their mind and was able to lock that in and let them move on. So those moments of saying this could do the job, step back, plan a little bit less, actively get involved, and then summarize clearly what has just happened for them, because it's almost exclusively easier for today's kids to let them screw around with it, figure it out, and then name it than it is for us to describe it by name and say, go look for it.
You know, Dennis, every time we chat, I always tell you I learned something. And when I hear that teachers, when I hear that you're suggesting that teachers need to plan less and step back and let students explore, I know a lot of the Teach Better family members will get some anxiety with that, right? Like, oh, I like to have control. That makes me nervous. What if we don't get to the right end result? And I think it's so interesting hearing you share your insight. It's not that you're not planning. You're just planning only the important stuff, right? You're still leaning into the standard and what you're trying to accomplish. You're still planning those mastery questions. You're still identifying the objectives to ensure that we have some goal that we're working to reach. We're just not drawing the treasure map for them. We're drawing parts and then allowing them to explore. And I think that's so interesting. Sometimes as educators, we say either I need to overplan or not plan. But really what you're sharing is somewhere in the middle, maybe even towards the lesser, to say you just need to know where you're going and find a tool to help you get there.
I can't echo that enough. And let's be clear about this. The analogy that I like to use is that teaching is not performing Shakespeare. Teaching is improv comedy, which every single educator should be taking as a course in their undergraduate, because the lesson number 2 is yes-anding, taking what somebody said to you and not putting up a wall of no. If you're on stage moving around and someone says, it looks like you're digging something up, and you say, no, I'm not digging, the show's over. Yeah, you have to now pitch into the fact that you're digging that person's grave, right? Suddenly you have yes-anded that situation. And that happens in our classrooms so much. A kid does something wrong, point out the right, and then build off of that right and continue moving forward with it. We have to make those chances for taking that yes and moment. But in improv comedy, there's a skeleton of a sketch. We kind of know where we want to go. There's this idea of where we're playing toward, and that's the lesson plan. Don't fill in Shakespeare, just get the skeleton and then build a body in real time.
Well, the most engaging classes that maybe I've either observed or orchestrated or participated in are the ones where the instructor and the kids, the community is constructing, is creating an experience together, and that really is what speaks to me about improv comedy. You've got a little seed, a little spark, maybe a line to start with or a situation, and you've got performers with various talents and experiences who are coming together to literally create a narrative. And when we think traditional lesson planning, we're often thinking, just as you said, 7 times 5 is blank. You're leading kids along a path to a predetermined outcome, and when they get there, you think, "Oh, great job, teacher! They got exactly where I knew they would go." Instead, you're advocating for leaving space, leaving breathing room in your class period or your class hour or whatever block of time you've got with your learners, and to create an experience together that is going to be memorable and is going to be, similar to the Candy Crush or the bottle popping. It's got an element of the unexpected.
Can I pause the two of you? Because this might be my favorite conversation I've had in the last 6 months. Really quick, before we get too far, can one of you explain the game Yes and? Because I have to tell you, we play this game religiously at my house, and I will share on that later. But will somebody talk to that? Because in case there's anybody listening, either on the Teach Better Talk podcast when this becomes an episode, or even live with us exclusive in our private Facebook group, I want to make sure they fully understand how this game works.
Well, I mean, my experience with it is that, honestly, it was during an improv comedy class, which I can't imagine if you think I took, but there I am. It's like, the idea is whatever is presented to you, the goal is to build on that and continue the story. So like I said, somebody comes to me and will say, "Hey, it looks like you're digging something up." So now I'll say, "Yeah, and looks like you're going to be in there in a little while," right? And so they can't say no to that. So at the moment to go back to them, they're going to have to look into the hole and be like, "You know what? Looks pretty comfortable. What do you?" And suddenly I'm now describing the furniture and this hole that I'm digging for these people. But the story is developing because we allowed it to occur. Because yes made the next step possible, and not because no, I know better than you stood up and stood in the way. And a lot of us as teachers have a no, I know better than you, do it this way, or let me tell you this thing that it used to be, instead of getting the kids to that end on their own part by taking a slightly circuitous route through Yes and to where the place that you wanted them to go. We can lead to that cumulative end, and it's just fun to play. It's almost like a telephone game, or you just add a sentence onto the story. Like, one person says one sentence, you say the next story, you say the next sentence, you say the next sentence, and when it's over, suddenly we have this crazy story that we just built up. But again, in the classroom, that's going to be hard for some of you, and it's going to be hard for all of us at some point, because I can only speak to the actions that I attempt to create and the students that I have in front of me. And let's be real about this. Like, you don't all have the same situation as every other person in this room. And for some of us, it might be like absolute pulling teeth to get kids to say a word, much less say enough for me to bounce off of. And for that, I mean, first of all, I apologize, but that's a hard place to be. And so you've got different depths of work before you even get the audience into the theater for you to start this process. So there's a whole separate day's worth of discussion on strategies for how to make that happen. But it pitches back around to, how do you create an experience those kids want to be a part of? And if it's more natural for them, they're much more likely to build into it that way.
Yeah, I would love to challenge our community here as you're thinking about what your Sunday takeaway will be as you head into your week. There's obviously a ton of little things to say, ooh, I'm going to chew on that this week, or, oh, I'm going to look into that concept a little bit more. Oh, I'm going to go connect with Dennis on social media to make sure that I'm connected to him to continue this conversation. Or for me, I would love to challenge all of you also to add playing Yes and in some way with your class. Maybe this is going to be your bell ringer. Maybe this is, you look at the clock and you have 2 minutes left and it's some kind of like utilizing your time. We do it with our youngest who loves to argue, and we've decided, oh, there's no more arguing in the house. So the answer is always yes and. And it's kind of our joke that makes everybody giggle, but it's a great little activity that who knew everybody should take an improv. Maybe that should be it. Everybody should sign up for an improv class this week.
I'm telling you right now, if you're going to take two classes as an educator, and in my world, especially as a math teacher, it better be improv and sales, because you're selling people on a product that they do not want to buy most of the time, But to go metacognitive again on the yes and process, it changes as well. We do yes and as this like my job to kind of go forward with it, and for me, the idea that oh shoot, where did it go? My yes and is flipping out at the end of the day here. That when our kids go through an experience in the room, that they're setting up their own opportunity to explore and to be the first line that gives us the yes and, which is why we all have a lot of kids who won't start work. They'll raise their hand and say, what do I do? Right. And I've told them, I don't take what do I do? I will take what do I do next? Because that means you've started some idea of your own. And now I get to take it and push it forward in the yes and mindset. So like, I will answer that question. It means you're coming to me with something and I'm ready for that. That's the decision making that's going to tire me out, but I'm asking for it.
Oh, so many good takeaways, Brad. I know we're cutting this conversation short because I literally could talk about this all night. I know you could as well, but I think it's time for the Sunday Sparks. So we'll be right back with our next segment. And for all of you listening live, feel free to continue to put those celebrations and the questions in the comments. There's so much more, friends. Still one of my favorite commercials for our live streams. Hey, everyone, we are live for our Sunday weekly warm-up. And of course, this is my favorite segment, our Sunday Sparks. We're getting into not only feel goods, but also Dennis will be sharing how you can stay connected to him. I want to highly recommend his books and everything in between. So we'll get to that. We also have some funny holidays this week. So Brad, what do you have for us?
I have an unexpected connection, not knowing how Dennis and the three of us would dive into the power of the unexpected, the power of, surprise and delight. Dennis and Ray, if I had to ask you, could you name one of the most delightful things that could happen to you or that has happened to you unexpectedly, say in the last week?
Oh my God, I feel like there's so many things, but can I just say a lame one? And then Dennis, I'm coming to you. Lame one for me. Yeah. When packages show up a day early, I cannot express the happiness when it's like, we'll show up Friday and then all of a sudden Thursday afternoon and you're like, that's mine. Dennis, go ahead.
It's only moderately unexpected, but honestly, like it wasn't even for me. Just yesterday, I drove 2 hours from my house to a random spot in New York to hear my wife perform with a band. She unexpectedly, from singing choral works and singing with a choir, was looking for some more. And now she's a singer with a Pink Floyd cover band. And if you guys know Pink Floyd at all, she went out and she rocked the crap out of Great Gig in the Sky. And she just nailed it. And I sat there tingly like, this is outstanding. This is what she's wanted. And so for me, it wasn't, like I said, unexpected, but there was unexpected joy in what I anticipated. And that was really neat for me.
Were you sitting in the audience being like, oh my God, I know her?
Yeah, I was sitting behind the camera recording it for her so she could watch it later.
That's so good.
Yeah, that one over there, that's mine. I got that one. That's mine.
Well, when we think about the serendipitous moments that we don't expect but are so impactful for us, or Dennis, as you're seeing a loved one shine in a way that brings both you and them joy and happiness, and there's that wash of gratitude and surprise that occurs, and this is the Sunday Spark, is unexpected moments of delight. This comes from goodnewsnetwork.org, and a recent survey commissioned by Alpen Delight, a snack brand, a delightful snack brand, named up to 30 of the most unexpectedly delightful things to happen, from finding cash in the pocket of an old pair of jeans, getting a surprise refund, receiving a compliment from a stranger, when the radio plays your favorite song unexpectedly, or when a familiar fragrance or a familiar smell from your childhood turns up. These are 30 of the top unexpected moments that cause surprise and delight. And this is the spark. This is my challenge to our Teach Better family and community, is find those moments and recognize and celebrate those moments, and invite your loved ones, invite your colleagues, and invite your kids to reflect on not only the moments that have brought them surprise and delight recently, but imagine if we could collectively make that kind of gratitude and that kind of awareness, that moment to moment feeling that the next big surprise could just be around the corner. What an amazing community we can continue to grow.
Ray, if I can jump in real quick, sorry. But like your moment and my moment, these are easily ported into our classrooms. Like for you, when you're like, this package arrived early, that moment, a kid gets something sooner than you expected for them to get. And you just celebrate with them because it's here.
Oh.
And that moment that somebody performs for you the way you knew they could, but outstandingly different, better, in a way that makes you both say, yeah, we worked together. We did this here. Like I've seen you preparing for this. You're ready for this. Those things really make action in our classrooms real. They make those sparks real, and they entirely come from those relationships you keep talking about building. They won't be there if you don't know the people there.
So good. Other ways to celebrate students this week and maybe have some of those special spark moments, also in celebrating the weird holidays coming this week. You guys excited to hear about the weird holidays?
So excited.
Okay, obviously Halloween, right? Like, can we just get that one out of the way? Obviously, Tuesday's Halloween. It's probably been all over your neighborhood. Your kids have been talking about it for a week. Everyone's confused because it's on a Tuesday. That's happening. We know. Other things happening this week. Tomorrow is Haunted Refrigerator Night. It's a reminder to clean out all the moldy food in your refrigerator, just in case you haven't done that in a while. It's also National Checklist Day for those of you who love a good checklist. I am probably a checklist addict, so I think I'll be celebrating that for sure tomorrow. November 1st, of course, is National Authors Day, National Cook for Your Pets Day. Dennis, do you have a pet that you'll be cooking for on November 1st?
I have 3 pets, and they shall receive no cooking.
Oh, well, you could also celebrate National Vinegar Day, November 1st. So you have plenty of options. November 2nd will be a variety of things. One is, it says National Deviled Eggs Day. Do you guys like deviled eggs?
Oh, yeah.
It's not my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Why not? And then it's also All Souls Day, which is exciting. And then Friday the 3rd, we'll celebrate National Homemaker Day, National Sandwich Day, and of course, the one and only World. I apologize for those, World Fountain Pen Day, which is something that I know all of us will be celebrating.
I'll get on my.
Oh, wait. There's more. What about Give Someone a Dollar Day, November 3rd?
Give someone a dollar day, and they can put it in their jeans pocket, and they can find it 6 months later, and they can have that moment of surprise and delight.
And math question that goes right into that whole thing, making it relevant. Give someone a dollar day. The question is, how many dollars will you need to make that happen? And long story short, the answer is 1. Because if I give Brad 1 and Brad gives that to you and you give it to the next person, only $1 can give everyone $1. And there we go.
Amazing. See the things we can learn on Sunday Weekly Warm-Up. Friends, we want to make sure you connect with the one and only Dr. Dennis Sheeran, one of my favorite people to interview always, one of my favorite speakers to enjoy, somebody I will always recommend his books, his resources, and connecting with him. Dennis, how can we stay connected?
Well, if you're looking for me on Twitter or on Instagram, it's at MathDennisNJ. It's Dennis with one N. I've been fighting people on that my whole life. I recently started throwing some stuff out there on TikTok at Sheeran for President. If you look for me there, that's pretty fun. I'm thinking that might work out in maybe, I don't know, maybe even 2022 or four, who knows. But you can find my books on Amazon and in Barnes & Noble, and you can look more about my writing and my work and my thinking on my website, DennisSheeran.com. Any one of those ways, try to get in touch with me if you want to. I'm sure we can talk about sharing ideas, talking with your schools, or just being in touch about all the things we talked about today.
So good. You can also bring Dennis to your next Institute Day, conference through the Teach Better team. So if you have any issues connecting with him, please reach out to Brad or I. We would love to help you better connect with educators to continue to expand your PLN. Brad, what are your insightful words that you're going to share with our community to wrap up the show today on this wonderful Sunday?
Wow.
I know, no pressure, but like this is everything that matters moving forward. So this is like make or break moment, buddy.
Something that sparked when I was listening to Dennis's conversation tonight was the power of collective efficacy, the power within our communities to rally together as educators to become interested, passionate, and dedicated about student success and staying curious about it. And what I loved about our conversation tonight, Ray and Dennis, and so grateful that we connected. Incredible call to action to spark that kind of surprise, delight, engagement in our communities, and to create that sense of community together, leaving space for the unexpected and leaving space for us as educators to celebrate and delight in what kids are discovering.
So good. See you guys later.